Hey, good evening, everyone. It's CJ. I want to welcome you to the inaugural edition of the CJOMC cast, which is the open mic cast. I thought about this. I've been thinking about it for over a year now. Hey, want to welcome everyone. So, hey, what's up, Revolutionary Bliss? Good to see you in the chat room. What's up, Sky Queen? Good to see you as well. But then thinking about this for a while in terms of what media is and how it relates to the audience and connecting with so many. So I'm very excited to be doing this first live cast and inviting people to join, jump in the conversation. Hey, Velas, what's up? Good to see you. Just because, in part, because there's so many things going on right now, and one of the issues and the topics that's at the very top is obviously what's happening with the Ukraine. And there are so many intricate parts that are taking place, so many different angles to approach this. So I'm going to share a little bit around my perspectives, and then I'm looking forward to people jumping in and participating in the conversation and sharing what your thoughts are. And it could be, if you want to post a question in the text in the chat, go for it. You know, we can pop it up there. If you don't feel comfortable jumping in the stream, that's perfectly fine. A couple of dynamics to me that really fall into this is number one is in regards to the U.S. administration, and that primarily is because we are looking at an absolute dismal administration that is struggling, not only domestically but internationally in terms of influence, in terms of how they're looked at, and where that massive shift took place. Which everyone that's listening right now is smart enough to understand is that took place with Afghanistan, right? We were told by the State Department, like, hey, we're very confident that that the Afghani army is going to stand strong, and there's no chance the Taliban are going to take over. And what took place, literally from the time that we started evacuating things, it was like an hour, right? It was an hour, and the Afghanistan president loaded up his suitcase full of cash and said, "I'm getting the hell out of here. Good luck. We'll see you." The next thing you know, we're seeing pictures and videos of literally people hanging on to the actual airplanes, the massive transits that were trying to leave Afghanistan, and then very tragically, people were like freaking falling from the sky. So there's no doubt this administration and in the bigger picture, in terms of the State Department, and the U.S. hegemony that's at risk here of what's transpiring, where there is a significant lack of confidence. So that's why Ukraine is so important. Just one angle of why Ukraine is so important is because the administration, as well as the State Department, the alphabet agencies, are looking to establish some level, like just a minimal level of some type of credibility on the world stage to say, hey, we can deliver on something, right? So we're going to deliver to you a NATO-based Ukraine, and here are the reasons why, and that's what's unfolding here. So I should have started with this, but where I feel absolutely terrible for is I feel absolutely terrible for the people of Ukraine, because they're like the sacrificial lamb that are out there that we're just willing to go full scorched earth theory, and we're willing to let the ducks fly and allow massive potential mass killings, loss of life there in Ukraine. So to me, that's the real tragedy of this, is that there's no compensation, there's no consideration of the loss of life and the potential for that of Ukraine. So that's one angle. And it kind of transitions into the second angle of what is the most important, and that's the fact that the United States, the British, the Western-based oligarchs cannot afford any type of Russia influence in the EU, right? We just can't have that. Like, the United States is saying, hey, look, we cannot allow Russia to have, whether it's an energy mandate or whether it's any type of conversation or any type of just really type of mandate in regards to what the influences of Russia in the EU. We can't allow that, and that's such a, to me, you would think that it'd be a no-brainer when you're looking at the EU being so energy dependent on Russia, that they would be stating at this point where they're willing to say, hey, you know what? We're willing to pay 20 or 30% more for LNG, US-based LNG, versus what Russia is. Now, On the flip side of that is Russia, and their actions are very important because they have, and I can't recall. I'll figure it out here in a moment. But there was one podcaster, and I do have his channel brought up. I see it on one of the tabs, so I'll bring it up here in a minute. Who brought up a great point in the fact that, like, Russia and Vladimir Putin looks at the EU as a marketplace, and I hey, what's up, Crypto King? Good to see you in the house. Raven Six is in the house as well. Good to see you. Velas is in the house, so welcome, Velas. Sky Queen's in the house, and so thank you guys for jumping into this stream. Really based upon Ukraine, NATO, the EU, all the intricate parts of everything that's taking place, and it's complex. It's not easy to understand. However, what we cannot do, and this is flipping to another angle of it, is we cannot allow another Iraqi weapons of mass destruction type of UK, Tony Blair, George Bush instigated escalation take place. We just simply cannot allow that, and for the most part, that's what we are witnessing. So kind of bring us up to speed a little bit. I really wish it all together that more people would be involved in trying to understand the matter of what's taking place, and they're not. Not because of their likings, is because of the propaganda that they're receiving, from primarily the U.S. media, and nothing says let's go to war better than Republican and Democrats in walking in lockstep together to advocate for war. So let's break this down a little bit. The most recent news is this. Let me bring up this string real quick. I apologize. I'm flying solo here, so bear with me as I do the share screen and all that kind of good stuff. You guys know what I'm talking about. So the first one is this: is that Putin and Macron have agreed to have trilateral talks in regards to halting the escalation in Ukraine. So from a perspective of Russia, it's very important for them to maintain a marketplace with the EU, understanding that the EU is a huge marketplace, for their energy. And I can get it. They don't want to appear as the agitators. They don't want to appear as the instigator through this. They'd much rather resolve this through diplomacy. So for that, I'm glad that Russia is at the steadfast handing of Vladimir Putin and his leadership, that he's able to, because I wouldn't be able to. I would not be able to deal with the stupidity of this administration with all their false flag and the attacks are going to take place on this particular date. Macron, he's got a lot at stake here in terms of, he has an election cycle that's coming up. He's dealt with a massive amount of protests in regards to the lockdown, the things that are occurring in France. And this could be to him one of the saving grace things, no different than Biden. And with the way Biden is looking at this is an opportunity. So it's unfortunate that people would rather put political gain ahead of diplomacy. But that's what we're witnessing. Now, what France could do is obviously to try to broker some type of resolve. Russia has been pretty clear in their line in the sand, is stating, hey, look, we can't allow Ukraine to join NATO, which they pretty much already are, right? Like, everyone has already stated that, like, they're pretty much under NATO and what's taking place there. But one thing Russia cannot allow is for the little sections of Ukraine that are at Kiev, that are very heavily populated with Russians for a long time. They can't allow for those areas to be, under attack and to see a lot of Russians killed. That's their primary concern. So we'll see where this goes in terms of what Macron can do. And to me, it's pretty easy, right? It's pretty easy for Ukraine to say, hey, look, we're no longer going to seek any type of joining NATO. We're going to hold off on that. We're going to have like a 5 or 10 year window for us to discuss and come back to this. But like I stated earlier, that's difficult for Russia to accept because for the most part, Ukraine is already part of NATO and under, U.S. influence, which when you say NATO, you might as well say the U.S. because they're one and the same. A couple other things that were interesting is what, again, it goes back to the hype in terms of what's being said. We're watching another, basically, Boris Johnson, who's basically another Tony Blair, now that he's under control, and saying, hey, you need to say these things, where he's drawing those war drums, and he's saying that Ukraine and Russia planned the biggest war in Europe since 1945. So let's listen to what he has to say about this matter.
The plan that we're seeing is for something that could be really the biggest war in Europe since 1945, just in terms of sheer scale. You're looking at not just an invasion through the east, through the Donbass, but according to the intelligence that we're seeing, coming down from the north, down from Belarus, and actually encircling Kiev itself, as Joe Biden explained to a lot of us last night. And I think people need to understand that the sheer cost in human life that could entail, not just for Ukrainians, but also for Russians.
Okay, so number one, who would legitimately at this point be listening to anything that this particular administration says? Like when he says that, well, Biden has explained this and Biden has done this, that he lost me right there, right? To me, it's obviously irrelevant in terms of what the State Department says, because how many times have they been accurate with any of their predictions and things that have taken place? The credibility is absolutely zero, and that's part of the struggle of what we're trying to come to terms with here. Now, the other thing that's taken place is that, and again, Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, it's kind of tough to kind of measure and benchmark where he is, because a lot of people state that he has no control of the country to begin with, that the separatists in Ukraine are going to escalate things at their will, that if they choose to do so, they're not going to listen to him. He's kind of just like basically a figurehead. So I can completely understand that. Now, a couple of things that he has done that have been very interesting is at the peak of this escalation, he said, hey, well, Biden, if it's, why don't you come to Ukraine so we can, talk about this, and we can show you that it's not what you think it is. It's completely different. But then the media kind of flips it, and they take the other perspective where he's issuing the ultimatums, or the hey, that what, this is going to take place, that Russia's going to do this. The other thing that Zelensky did, which I thought was very wise on his part, he said, hey, listen, he's like, if it's like an absolute certainty right now that Russia is going to invade Ukraine, which to me, it makes absolutely no sense why they would need to do that, then why are we imposing those sanctions that you're talking about? If it's known for certain, right? If the alphabet agencies of the United States, this administration, know emphatically that Russia is going to attack Ukraine, put those sanctions in now. I'm not agreeing to it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but this is what he's saying, and he's completely correct. If it's a 100% certainty, then what are they waiting for? What are the State Departments waiting for? So I again, I see parts where he is kind of pushing back against some of that narrative. I want to go back to the chat room real quick. So Bellas, yeah. How can the U.S. get away with this? Well, because we have the dollar. I good question, Rocky Boy. One, but when you have the world reserve currency and you work with the World Bank, the IMF, and you create the amount of debt and the loans that are guaranteed, that gives you a leeway. That gives you the influence where, hey, listen, you don't agree with this, then the dollar system is shut off to you. So that's how they can get away with it. So hopefully that answers that question. If anyone wants to contradict that or has something else to add, then just post it in the stream, or jump in the stream and partake in the conversation. Let's go into some of the propaganda that we're witnessing, because I think this is very interesting in terms of what's taking place. We're seeing it both on Fox News, CNN, all the major legacy news systems, which we're really witnessing a media-driven, what I'm deeming as a media-driven escalation. So here's the first one right here. This comes to us from Fox, and I spell it F-A-U-X, not F-O-X. So this is Fox News talking about Ukraine prepares for possible Russian invasion. Here we go.
A Fox News alert, dramatic video as a Fox News crew is on the ground when Russia separatists fire artillery rounds in Ukraine, Our own Trey Yingst witnessed that chaos firsthand. He's now in the capital of Kiev, where he joins us live. Hi, Dre, and good evening to you. Let me ask you, we've seen the slow buildup of troops. The estimates are more than 150,000. We saw a cyber attack on Ukraine, and now this firing, the artillery fire, as you reported today. What's it going to take to call this an actual war? What's it going to take to call it a real invasion?
Well, look, right now, conflict is erupting in the eastern part of the country. There were over 1,500 ceasefire violations reported today. And we did spend the day with Ukrainian troops who are continuously taking fire from Russian-backed separatists. Those troops tell us the separatists are not only using things like mortars and artillery units, but also anti-tank missiles. They did show us evidence to support those statements. I did speak with the Ukrainian interior minister today, who said the country is prepared for a variety of scenarios that could unfold in the coming days. Here's what it looked like as the position that we were at earlier was shelled following our conversation with that minister.
The fire that we have coming in right now is being fired from just a few kilometers away. Russian-backed separatists clearly identified there were a lot of people at that position and started to hammer it pretty heavily with artillery. You heard a few seconds ago, those explosions in the distance, those were incoming rounds. That's what the Ukrainian military has been dealing with the past 48 hours. They say they are following the Minsk protocols and that it's the Russian-backed forces, you hear in the distance there more explosions, that are violating this agreement.
2 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed so far in the renewed fighting. This has.
I want to pause it there. Like, am I the only one that looks at that as so freaking fake, right? It reminds me of, was it Wolf Blitzer? And I can't remember who else were on top of the rooftop of the quote unquote building in Iraq that was being bombed or whatever took place. That's what it reminds me of. It's like, you know, hey, we're in the battlefront, and you know, we don't have vehicles or anything. We're walking away to get to safety, right? It just seems so staged and so fake. And maybe I'm a skeptic. What's that, Raven? That says no, the CNN lady sniffed the clothes that were. Yeah, right. Yeah, there's probably chemical traces in there, right? Like, you know, Crypto King, you beat me to the punch. Like, that reminds me of the fake CNN video from way back in the 90s with the fake gas attack and the prostitutes scrambled to put on their gas masks. That's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I think it was Wolf Blitzer, and was it Bernie King? Not Bernie King. I don't know. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? That it's infamous now. They have that video where like they put on their face gas mask, and then it's reported later on, oh yeah, they weren't being serious. But that's what that video reminds me of. It's like we're undertaking heavy artillery right now, and we're getting away. We're like literally getting away, and we're running away to safety. Granted, there's no vehicles. It's people walking, right? They're like walking on the side of the street. So again, I'm probably a skeptic, but again, it just goes back to the massive propaganda of people that we're facing right now in regards to this media-driven. I'll continue to say it, a media-driven escalation, and that came from no other than Fox News. Let's jump into this next one, and this was tensions boil over in East Ukraine as attacks turn deadly. NBC News. Here we go.
Tonight, tensions boiling over in Ukraine's east. Ukrainian military leaders fleeing shelling from Russian-backed separatists as they tour the front lines. The tempo of shelling incidents over the front lines increasing dramatically. More than 100 attacks reported just today, according to the Ukrainian military, killing 2 soldiers. I visited the front lines a few weeks ago.
Some people say that the Ukrainian military is outmanned and outgunned by the Russians. How do you feel about that?
He told me, I will fight with my bare hands for my motherland, even if they have more people. Putin has accused Ukraine of oppressing Russian speakers in the separatist regions of Donbass, even committing genocide against them. Charges Ukraine's government has repeatedly denied. The main concern that Russia will fabricate a fake Ukrainian attack here and use it as a pretext for a full-scale invasion. There are signs that may already be happening. A car bomb yesterday that allegedly targeted a top rebel leader yielded no casualties. Ukraine said it was staged. And this morning, an escalation from separatist leaders calling their people to arms. I appeal to all the men of the Republic who are able to hold weapons in their hands, stand up for their families, their children, wives, mothers, he said. And residents are answering his call, signing up at recruiting stations. Yesterday, the leaders warned Ukraine planned to invade and called for civilians to evacuate to Russia. It's causing panic, people piling onto trains and buses and struggling to withdraw cash from ATMs. Right now, only one ATM is functional, this woman said. There's no money in the other ATMs. That's why there's so many people here. More than 30,000 civilians have since fled as the drums of war reach a deafening crescendo.
So hopefully you see what I mean. I mean, most of our audience is really getting this and completely understanding this escalation. That's for the most part is really, media driven. And Harley Schlanger, I want to give him credits because he was like one of the first to really call out and say, do they not understand the financial impact of what's happening in Ukraine right now? The bank runs that were just mentioned in regards to the ATMs completely running dry, where people are literally withdrawing all their money from the system. Maybe that's what we need to do here in the United States to wake up the banking cartel and the disrupt the oligarchs, the bank runs. But again, just really falls back to and the other perspective that I really want people to grasp from this is that we always see during these times where literally it's the only time that we really see the Republicans and Democrats join hands. Anytime there's a chance for war, for escalations, what do? They join hands and kumbaya, and it's yes, we need to do this, and we need to give Ukraine some freedom and liberty, and they get to decide their own voice and allow the people to decide the future. Never mind what's happening in Canada, right? Like north of the border. But you won't hear us speak bad about that. Whenever you heard of a Republican or Democrat, outside of just a few who've really rebuked the level of tyranny that's taking place in Canada. And I don't want to drift too far in this conversation, but just getting back to it, for those people, and I'll continue to say this, the people, the listeners that are still buying into the fact that there could be a Republican or a Democratic solution to our country, forget it. Okay. It's not going to happen. And I don't care who the sitting sitting at the helm is, whether it's Biden or Trump, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. They're all controlled. They have something on them that they have to play by certain rules and everything that's involved. And hence why when there's a time for war, there's a time for escalation. It's time that the Republicans and Democrats join hand. Let's pass these bills. Let's give them billions of dollars of weapons and aid. And we need to do this because this is the right thing to do. Now, there are a few voices that are of opposition that are kind of far and few and in between. One of those who has been very steadfast is Tulsi Gabbard, and she knocks it out of the park when talking about why is the U.S. involved? Why does it make sense that for the most part, where the United States is leading this whole charge against them? So let's jump into this. It's a good little 2 minute of what Tulsi had to say. 1 minute.
American people wondering, what is this going to? President Biden is not addressing the number one question that really he should address, which is the American people wondering, what is this going to cost us here at home? And why are we doing this? Why is the president making the choices that he's making? The reality that we're facing is that already with this increasing confrontational approach that the president is taking, we're seeing inflation rise. We're seeing fuel prices rise. Those things will only continue to get worse if the United States and partners start to put sanctions in place against Russia. We'll see our inflation continue to worsen. We'll see Russia retaliate. We'll see them likely use cyber warfare against our financial institutions, against our infrastructure. The United States will then have to retaliate, and we'll end up in this endless cycle of tit for tat that will hurt the American people in ways that are difficult to even estimate at this point. And the danger of this ultimately is these kinds of tactics that are tactics of warfare could ultimately escalate to the point where it's the United States versus Russia, two nuclear armed countries, where either intentionally or unintentionally, we could end up having to face that reality of nuclear warfare and attacks.
Okay, so I agree with Tulsi on a lot of things that she had to say. But if you really think about what's happening in our republic, and this is where I get frustrated, is when you see a lot of people posting, well, China, well, Russia, this, and there's bad actors everywhere, right? There's no perfect, government. There's no perfect hegemony. It doesn't exist. There's corruption, there's fraud. It exists everywhere, right? But if you look at the United States in terms of the turmoil and what's happening here, a lot of the challenges that we face of our country are self-inflicted wounds. Does anyone want to agree or disagree with that in the chat room? That again, most of the challenges and the destruction of our republic are self-inflicted wounds. Let's start with number one. Let's start with our monetary policy. Let's look at our monetary policy that believes that we can literally create, monetary and exchange systems and bank repos overnight, where literally the Fed is just throwing money at the banks, and we're propping up the top 1% time and time again, and we believe that we could just continue that cycle. We could just continue that cycle, and it's an endless thing that we can do that, and it doesn't work that way. It comes to the point where people start looking at our bonds and saying, hey, you know what, we don't want to hold dollars. We don't want to do this anything, and that's a systematic thing that's approaching here. Is that for the largest part, we are really hitting that peak time that it's really looking at a reset that needs to take place within the system, but it's self-inflicted. So that's number one, is our monetary policy. Number two, let's take a look at our foreign policy. Let's take a look at our massive amount of spending that takes place and looking for regime change, where we firmly believe that the only way to influence change is done through our military. Not only in the Middle East, we're seeing it in Europe, definitely in Africa, the things that are taking place, but yet we want to point blame at China and saying that they're basically exporting debt to these third world countries at the sake of their gain and their shortages. But where does the gain of U.S. diplomacy get us? Where is the gain in the last several years of things that we've taken place, the billions of dollars, trillions of dollars that have been spent? Answer me this. I'd be happy. Any Republican or any Democrat wants to jump on here on our stream and debate this. Show me that. Show me where any bit of money that it's been spent on these wars has benefited the United States. Is it Iraq? Is it Iraq? Is it Syria? Is it Syria? Maybe in Syria. Is it Afghanistan? Is it Afghanistan? We know that was so much a success. We don't see it. There's absolutely zero success rate that we're witnessing, and you will never see any official from our government or anyone. Why? Because they don't do any type of self-evaluation. The only self-evaluation that they want to do is that pat themselves on the back and spend more money and figure out how they can corrupt the system to their benefit. That's the only thing that they see time and time again. And it's very unfortunate what's happening in the Ukraine. I'm praying and hoping that they can find a peaceful way out of it. But literally, I think it's a unique opportunity, because in the event that Russia is able to broker deals directly with the Ukraine or even with the EU, that's what's at stake here. That's what's at stake here. What most people don't understand is that literally we are at war and we're fighting for the influence of the EU. And is it going to fall to Russia and China in terms of their affiliations, their deals that are being brokered? Or is it going to fall to the United States and the Western and in the UK, the Western, this idea of a isolated, one world policy versus getting away from what, the other countries involved in, whether it's the Belt and Road Initiative, whether it's, all these exchange and trade systems that are being set up, outside of the dollar, that we continue to reject and we can, continue to push back against. Raven makes a great point. The U.S. defense budget going up to $800 billion next year for what? What's the purpose of that? Again, it's just a huge extortion of and prop up of the military industrial complex. and the systems in place that keep it going. It's truly unfortunate. I do want to give a shout out. There is a great YouTube channel, and I had this video brought up earlier, and I know he's written books. I know in the Saker blog that the Saker has a really tends to post his videos as well as some of his thoughts. His YouTube channel, I want to bring it up here real quick. Here we go. Let me share this real quick. His YouTube channel, add to stream. There we go. His YouTube channel is under Smoothie X12. And this guy is just like, he's on it. He completely gets it. He's very smart. He obviously has huge military applications, whether it's strategic or defense. He really gets it. And I feel terrible because I can't even remember his name. But he's all over it. So bookmark his YouTube page. He does also have a Patreon as well. But he's nailed it from day one. Like all of his assessment, whether it's his sit reps, breaking it down, what's taking place, or his analysis of strategic. This guy gets pretty technical in his analysis of what's happening in regards to it. And for the most part, he's accurate. He's on point in regards to. I'll play a little bit of tidbit so you guys understand like his level of what he's talking about. So let me bring this into the stream. Oh, it's already in stream. Okay, here we go. So let's play a little bit of this so you guys get exactly a feel for what I'm talking about.
Me again, and you probably already know the reason I am gracing you with my ugly face. It's the fact that obviously at this stage we have a serious escalation in the Lugansk and Donetsk republics, and they've been shelled for the last 24 hours incessantly by the Ukrainian armed forces. And there are some measures already taken with the evacuation of the children and women and older people, all civilians, obviously, to Rostov, neighboring Rostov-on-Don Oblast, region of Russia. And Vladimir Putin already gave the order to Russian Emercom, the Ministry of the Emergency Situations, to provide at least 10,000 rubles for each base and provide all necessary accommodations for people who are being taken out of LDNR in the face of their basically barbaric shelling. And so here we are. Where do I want to start this? First, if you look today at USA Today, you will find, surprisingly, that Joe Biden's poll numbers are lower than those of Donald Trump in the same period. It's about 41% approval rating, and
I'm gonna stop it there. There's no need to jump into the full video. Hey, Texas Tom Payne, welcome to the chat. But I know a lot of people are making their assessment in terms of what's going to take place. And a lot of people are saying, hey, look, you know what? It's going to be like time before. There's going to be no escalation. And I pray and I hope that's the case. I really do. I hope there's not going to be any major outbreak of war. The factor that I keep considering time and time again is the desperation level that the United States and this administration is in, right? That they are so desperate for a win, so desperate for any type of way of saying, hey, the U.S. is back. Look at the influence. Look how we were able to handle this crisis in Ukraine. And whenever there's people that are in desperation mode, it's difficult to put a variable on that, right? You can't just simply state this, because that level of desperation falls back to a lot of things. And why we see people in desperate times do crazy things. And that to me is a variable that it's difficult to assess and understand. But obviously I want peace, but we are dealing with that right now. We are dealing with a major shift away from Western influence geopolitically. And there's not a whole lot of people that are talking about it, and that's why I'm glad that we're here. So unfortunately, I didn't even jump into this stream to chat about it or share their perspective. I want to open it up for the last few minutes. Everyone, the link is in the description to jump into the StreamYard to participate in the conversation and share your perspective of what's happening or your thoughts on it. I hope that this is a venue or a platform that we can kind of continue this. It's more of a audience-driven content where we get people to jump in, more of like an open mic forum to share. Hey, this is my perspective. This is what I see, and this is what I think is going to happen. But that's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. I think the important thing is to get the message out, to fight, to counter the mainstream narrative that this is going to happen, that that war is inevitable. We're starting to see the programming definitely take place in regards to what's happening. So there's many things in here and how it impacts us, here in the United States. I'm hoping that there can still be some level of peaceful negotiations to reach. But however, we know that Russia is being very firm in terms of their line in the sand of how they're approaching this with Ukraine. And we also know there's a lot of instigators. There are a lot of instigators within Ukraine who are willing to do things to provoke and bring Russia into this that have nothing to do with the Ukraine government, because they're desperate for this, and they need Russia to be the bad man in this situation. So whether Russia wins the escalation and the war, if it does happen, they end up looking like the bad guy as it relates to Europe and the EU, which financially makes a huge change. So at the same time, Russia can not idly sit by and do absolutely nothing for this long, because they've been very clear, they've been very transparent in not only their actions in regards to the requests that they've written drafts, they've published that so that everyone can read it, everyone can see it. Where you have our State Department who says, hey, we're going to respond to your letter, but please do us a favor, don't publish it. We don't want that to be out there. So that tells you a lot of things. But so I want to thank everyone for listening in. This is the very first edition of the CJ. What I'm deeming is a it's a YouTube channel. It's titled CJOMC, which is Open Mic Cast. Really looking to create content that is more driven around audience participation and conversation in general. I don't have all the answers. I know you guys don't, but I'd love to hear different ideas and different thoughts, because I think that's how we benefit. When we talk about this, we get it into a platform where we can truly counter the mainstream narrative. So please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Again, CJOMC Open Mic Cast. Please share, like this podcast, this live stream, so that way we can continue to spread the word as it relates to what's happening in the world. We do have someone jumping in, Rev Bliss. Yahoo! So Rev Bliss, I'm going to bring you into the stream right now. So welcome to the stream. How are you?
Hi, Siege. I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes. You call me Siege, so you must be a rogue listener.
Yep. So
Awesome.
Question for you. I'm curious now. I'm going to validate this by saying I know very little on the Ukraine-Russia stage.
Neither do I, so we're on the same page.
Okay, good. I just had to say that because I really don't. But I'm thinking, like, Putin has had everyone go after him, calling him. Now, I'm not saying he's not a bad guy. I'm just saying, like, in the last, 20 years, everyone's saying how bad he is and pointing the finger. Now, maybe he's at the point where he wants to blow open the stage and say, fine, I'm going to make this move and then open up everything that I know about everyone.
Interesting.
Like,
yeah.
If he has had people hammering him, and I'm just saying the last, Obama.
Yeah.
So maybe, I would be at a breaking point. I would be at the point, like, fine, the whole world is kind of following along America, which is so hammered in destruction. He's cleaning up his country, and he's like, I'm done. And fine, if you're going to say this is the move that I'm going to do, maybe I do this move, and then I and then I show everything I have. I don't know. I don't know if there's any good people out there in the big stage right now.
Right. Yeah, that's a great angle. And when you think of Russia and you think of Vladimir Putin, they've really had to fight back. The last decade, 20 years where he's been in charge to really recover any type of financial interest into Russia. They've fought it. They've already fought a lot of the tariffs, a lot of the things that have taken place
And
with
clean
them.
out the money. And I think he really tried to change out the money aspect and having the deep state buy out their country and kind of, I'm not saying he's a good guy. I'm just saying like everybody has their breaking point. And I can't say he's been the bad guy when it's only been finger pointing at him. And I haven't seen where he's made these counter moves that they're all claiming he has. Like they do a lot of yelling. I mean, I hear that, but I also know the devil's a lot louder than anyone.
Right, I completely agree with you. Like that there is no government that's completely clean. It doesn't exist. But
and I think ours is the worst.
And ours is the worst. One of the interesting perspectives that you mentioned was in regards to being able to the dirty laundry that's taking place, and I truly believe that systematically that when Putin looks at things, it's very strategic. Where we always say that Russia is busy playing chess while we're playing checkers. Because that's
smart.
the way that appears, and he said it numerous times that that's one of the unfortunate parts about the U.S. and it makes a lot of sense in regards to our election cycle, where we get to see a sitting administration sit for no more than 8 years, right? Like 8 years, and in the course of really changing everything from economic to strategy and everything, sometimes it takes a lot more than 8 years, but we never afford that, and then you have to take into consideration that 2 years of that, at least, someone's going for re-election. So you might as well
not
just...
only that, but they have to clean up the mess from the administration before. If you look at, I mean, I can't believe what Trump was able to do in the short time he had it, along with all of the hurdles he had. I'm not saying he's a perfect man. I'm just saying he tried really hard for our country. That being said, he had to clean up so much from the mess before. Like, how much can our presidents do if they're actually dealing with something that's not so much of a battle from the beginning? Like, there could be a lot of advantage for everyone.
Yeah. Yep.
But they're not wanting that.
Yep. And you probably remember Rev Bliss during the time when Trump visited with Putin and Putin handed Trump the soccer ball. Remember the soccer ball, and everyone was like, "What's under that soccer ball?" And under each little thing on the soccer ball, there's exposing something, whatever. But I can tell you this: I can imagine there was quite a bit of intelligence gathered in Syria, in regards to who the U.S. and possibly Israel were supporting therein in regards to the quote unquote Syrian rebels of things that taken place. So they probably do have some significant information, but at the same time, the professionalism, maybe that's not the appropriate word. Let's scratch that. But I think Putin keeps everything on his chest. He keeps everything close and safeguarded, and he attempts to do things that are really very strategic. And point in case with that is the fact that, for the most part, they get to dictate in the entire Europe power situation in terms of energy, right? So they at any time could say, hey, listen, we're going to start cutting, that's a crazy thing. And you make it, and shifting gears for just real brief moment, the energy policy and that's hindering the United States in regards to the way that we approach Russia, because I believe that I think it was Tucker Carlson or someone exposed that at this point, like, because of the amount of drilling and things that the Biden administration has completely shut off, we're actually energy dependent upon even Russia. Like, I think they're our third or fourth largest exporter to the United States, like in diesel right now. So what happens if that's completely shut off? So there's a lot of...
It's already going that way. I mean, we're 10 years behind what we should be. And actually, I mean, and Trump brought us, the first time, 75 years that we were actually exporting it. That's huge.
Very significant.
But it can be done again. It's just a matter of getting the dirty laundry out of there and opening up where we actually have our resources I don't know what these people are thinking about these Priuses and these cars that run off batteries. Like, I'm not kidding. I face myself too much.
So, Rev, where do you see it going? Where do you see it going in Ukraine? Do you see Putin instigating things in the Ukraine or attacking, or do you see more that there's going to be separatists in Ukraine who are going to be the instigators and trying to force Russia into an escalation?
Ukraine was lost 20 years ago. I mean, this is an absolutely failed battle already from the beginning, because if you can go with how many sitting presidents that have family members on gas companies heading in Ukraine, that was done back then. I mean, right now, this is just a political theater and a distraction.
Yeah. Ukraine already had their color revolution, right? It already took place.
They were done. Yeah. And it did. And I think they're just, the problem is that they're hyping the same, they're playing the same battle and expecting a different outcome. They're really, I mean, we can say thank you, Lord, because they're highlighting themselves. It's just this circle they can't get out of, which is okay. We kind of have to let them, I don't know, flush themselves. And it's not going to be fun.
No.
It has to change, but that's the only way to get rid of them.
Yep.
Is to outlast and outwit them right now.
That's true. Absolutely. You nailed it. Hey, Rev, I really want to thank you for jumping in the stream. Anything that you'd like to plug, or any sites or anything like that?
Thanks for tolerating me. Yes, you're welcome.
Whatever, tolerating. You're welcome anytime. Thank you. Hey, by the way, you are the very first person to participate in the CJOMC. So Rev Bliss.
So sorry.
No, you're so sorry. No, it's awesome. It's awesome. So, and that's the concept about it, is that, as much as we like to think that we understand things, but for me, the best thing is when we get people participating and sharing ideas and listening to each other, right? Like constructively listening to each other and coming up with these ideas. Like in what you stated, was like, hey, listen, I may not know things, but here are some things that I think that we should consider. And it opened my eyes to things in what you're saying. So I think that we benefit from that. And we don't have to live in this closed society and this cancel culture that we consistently see. So this is kind of an attempt to fight back against that and to raise awareness that, hey, look, we have some great ideas. So Rev, thank you for jumping in, and I look forward to you participating again.
Thank you for doing it,
right.
Siege.
Thank you. God bless. Bye. All right. So thank you for that, Rev Bliss, and very beneficial conversation and contribution to our conversation. So thank you for that. Again, want to thank you all for tuning in. This is CJ with the very first CJ open mic, and we need more of you. Like, I love you guys in the chat room. I know many of you have a lot to say. I'm not going to call you a keyboard warrior because I know you're not, and you may light me up tomorrow morning. So let's do this again real soon. So tonight's conversation was Ukraine, Russia, NATO, the EU. Let's pray for peace through this. We don't need an escalation. We don't need a war. But unfortunately, we always have to have a boogeyman. So I want to thank you all for listening in. This is CJ. God bless, and look forward to the next time. We'll see you. Take care and be safe. Over and out.